So do you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, my name is Taylor Cox. I'm a United States Army veteran.
And what branch and division were you in?
I was in the United States Army in 45th Infantry Brigade.
So how old were you when you first got in the military?
17 years old, and being 17, I had to ask for my mom's permission.
Okay. What did she think about that?
It was difficult to convince her, but I basically convinced her by telling her like I'm gonna sign up when I'm 18, and that by basically getting in at 17, I would get a year of like military time off of my total time in school still.
So why were you so eager to get in the military?
My grandfather had served, and he was a really important person to me, and I think a lot of it was just honor, and a lot of my childhood was spent around 9/11, so I think there was this desire to protect my community, protect the ones I loved, and protect the freedoms I enjoyed.
So what time period was this?
I signed up in 2007.
So you were in Iraqi Freedom, is that it?
Yeah, I served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. That was from 2011 to 2012. So technically I was there for Operation Iraqi Freedom and when it kind of rolled over into Operation New Dawn.
Got it. So you go through basic training, you're 17 years old. How long was it before you actually were on the ground in Iraq?
So that would have been 2007 when I joined, and 2011 when I was boots on ground. So a few years.
Okay. What was your first day like in Iraq?
I remember, we got on the C-130 from Kuwait and flew into Iraq, and I remember we were landing in Al-Assad Air Base, and to get there so that you don't get hit by any kind of like rockets or missiles or anything, the plane just kind of like comes in and then just like dive bombs into the airport, so you can even like let go of a water bottle and the water bottle kind of floats. And I remember getting there and just it feeling otherworldly, I had never seen like such a flat desert space like that before, so it was very shocking for me.
Because you're just a kid. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Bixby, Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay, so it's a different world.
Yeah, very different world. Yeah, I grew up around trees and lakes, and I've never really been to any kind of desert situation, so yeah, very different world.
So you start to acclimatize to that. What was your first week or two like?
Very busy. We were getting vehicles ready and kind of learning our routes that we were going to be taking. A lot of work, a lot of just loading vehicles up, getting vehicles prepped with weapons, ammunition, and understanding the routes that we were going to be taking.
And what was your training?
I was 11 Bravo, so I was an infantry soldier.
Okay. So what were you prepared for?
We were the gun security. Our job was to escort oil tanks. So we would operate, we did 6 gun trucks, three men a truck, a gunner, a driver, and a truck sergeant. And we were responsible from moving these Turkish truck drivers that were driving oil tankers, and we basically guarded them to move we would deliver oil to different bases, but our main job was to get them up over the mountains and in the Turkey.
So what kind of stuff would happen up in the mountains?
Well, the mountains are really dangerous just because we have these massive, big vehicles, and a lot of the roads there are not like here, so the mountain drives were always really dangerous. But once we crossed over into the border of Turkey is when it got a little bit more safe. Yeah.
So would you go under fire? Would there be IUDs?
Yeah, so as transporting oil, I would say that we were probably pretty high targets. So we dealt with a bunch of IEDs. Gunfire only a few times. There was a lot of explosions, which was moving the oil tankers and the truck drivers. It's kind of like herding cattle, and so like you get an explosion like that, and our job wasn't necessarily to engage. Our job was mainly to like push through. So like our engagements were our main goal was to get through with as many vehicles at the end as possible.
So did you end up in some tight jams?
Yeah, definitely a few times. We never really had any of our own vehicles hit. We were pretty. We had these boxes called rhinos that protected us a little bit, but unfortunately, some of the Turkish truck drivers would take some of those blasts.
Okay, so what paint a picture for me. When a Turkish truck driver hits an IED or they take a blast, what happens next?
Well, when it's not one of our own vehicles, unfortunately, what we have to do is just cut a loss. So at that point, that truck kind of becomes on its own, and our job is to round and scurry the rest of the supplies away from that area as quickly as possible. So a lot of times there wasn't really much we could do about a single vehicle.
Got it. So do you travel with the medic?
Yeah.
I assume, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you get the driver out of there, and for vehicles, one of your vehicles.
Yeah. So, it's like even the truck drivers, a lot of times, we couldn't really get the truck drivers. It was like protecting the oil supplies of the other ones. So
what would happen to the truck drivers?
a lot of times they got left.
Got left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately.
So what are some of the memories about that?
It's hard. I think for me it was a shock when I got there, because I kind of realized our job was protecting oil money, and that was our main goal, and it was really difficult in those situations to push through.
What was the worst of it?
My worst experience was we were on the road for 5 to 6 days a week, and we would travel and drive for anywhere from 10 to 15 hours a day. At one point in time, I was very tired, and I fell asleep at the wheel, and I veered off the road and I hit a 12-year-old little girl with the vehicle. I'm guessing she was 10 to 12, somewhere around there. We were driving these big M-Raps, and so the front bumper hit her about at her chest, and it just snapped her spine. We did get out to look at that incident, and it was really difficult when I got out of the vehicle. Some of her, I'm assuming, sisters were there, and they were all crying and very heartbroken, and I felt really, really bad. Yeah.
How do you recover from something like that? Like what next? So you get back in your trucks and just drive off?
And drive off because our job is not to provide medical care for that situation. For us to stop for much longer and provide medical care means that we're putting the rest of the oil trucks and all that supplies at risk. So our job is to get moving as quickly as possible. I was so beat up from that one that they took me out of the driver's seat, and I just rode in the vehicle after that one.
And the days, weeks after that, did that come back to you, or is this something that you put out of your mind for?
No, it definitely stuck with me for a while. I think I started at that point developing a lot of anger for what we were doing over there. I think a lot of it was going against my moral code, and it felt like it wasn't what I signed up for, I didn't feel like I was um, doing these things to protect our nation or anything. It very much felt like what I was doing was protecting the rights of oil corporations.
Yeah. How much longer after that were you in service? How much longer were you deployed?
That was month 5, so I spent 13 months total over there. So, quite a while still to go. After that, um, an- another thing I had realized when I was over there was um, all of our dining facilities and everything were ran by Iraqi civilians. And I had asked the interpreter one day, because we traveled to pretty much all the bases, and I had asked the interpreter one day, why the Iraqi civilians were working there. And she basically said, well, you guys have like rerouted all of our water, we have no food, you guys have destroyed our cities. So these people, like, this is what they're doing to survive. And they're living in tent cities, they're getting paid, but very minimal, basically just so they have spending money to spend on the base, And I spent some time going with the interpreter as we would travel from base to base, and I started filming some interviews with women and stuff that were in that situation.
Okay. And whatever happened to that footage?
As I came across U.S. Customs, I was met by military police, and I was arrested. My original charge was treason. I had, on the paperwork it shows that I had like a camera with information on it, and I spent, I think it was 82 days in solitary confinement. And at that point, I didn't think I was ever gonna see daylight again.
What was your experience like in solitary?
It was horrible. I was so mad, I was so angry to have signed up to do this thing where I thought that I was protecting freedom, and then to come home and have every ounce of my freedom taken away had me so pissed. I was so mad. I spent the first couple days trying to figure out how to kill myself. I tried to hang myself with my clothes, so they ended up taking my clothes away. I tried running into the walls with my head as hard as I could. Eventually I found kind of like a peace in it. I found a way I knew nothing about meditation or anything at that point. And I found a way to like resonate the cell. I could make noise and resonate the cell, and that helped. Eventually I had a court case, and they stripped me of my rank, stripped me back down to an E1, and they gave me an honorable discharge. It let me go. But what that did is it initiated a deep level of paranoia. I felt like, well, I'm only being released because they're going to like off me somewhere else. Once I got back home, I was so paranoid. They put me on Xanax, pain medications, antidepressants, and I lost track of my life. I was fueled by so much anger and hatred, and which led to a lot of drug addiction. The Xanax and the pain pills turned into heroin. Heroin turned into methamphetamines. smoking meth and taking pain pills turned into sticking a needle in my arm, and before I knew it, I had been homeless for 6 years and just strung out and lost, like literally lost.
So what was the transition like out of that?
So, like that long in drug addiction is wild. I there came a point where I was just miserable. I was dirty all the time, hungry all the time. I had nobody in my life. I had burnt all my bridges. My family had pushed away from me. I really didn't have any friends. And there started to come a point where I wanted to be sober, but I didn't really know how. So there was like a year period where like I knew I wanted out of it, but I didn't know how to get out of it. And so what would happen is I would start to get sober. I would get sober for 2, 3, 4 weeks, but I didn't really have a home. So then it would get cold outside, and then I'd go to like my friend's house, but that's where, more drugs were. So then all of a sudden, boom, I'm like back in another 4-month stint of like sticking needles in my arm again. Eventually my teeth got so rotted out that I was in just constant pain. The methamphetamines had rotted my teeth, and I was just in pain constantly. I got enrolled in Tulsa glass blowing school. So I got enrolled in glass blowing. I was like walking down the streets of downtown and went into this glass school during a first Friday, and they said that they had a veterans program. And so I signed up, and I was still homeless at the time when I started school there.
So at some point you were introduced to ayahuasca. How did that play a role in all of this?
So I went to a pool party, and some people there had mentioned that they had been to Arizona Yagé Assembly. And what really drew me in was that someone had said the music there feels like heaven. And that statement just really pulled me in, because I think when I look back at like my experience with religion in the past, it was never the person on stage preaching that brought me to feel source energy. It was music. It was like the worship songs that always made me feel connected. So I signed up for a ceremony in Arizona, and that was back in 2019. And I didn't really know what I had signed up for. But I went and I showed up. Once I got there, I had a really, my first night was challenging. It was very difficult and challenging. I had a lot that was being brought up to the surface. And there came a point in the night that I came up to you, and I don't really remember the conversation exactly, but I was kind of freaking out about something and being really worried about how I got to this point or whatever it might have been. But I remember you saying there are no coincidences, and you gave me a dose of medicine, and as I was like leaving the altar, I'd been blowing glass, so I noticed you had this like glass container that had like a little lid on it, and as I was going to leave the altar, you lifted the lid and asked if I wanted an orange. And so I took the orange, and I went back to my spot, and I went to a very deep medicine space. That dose, it was the first time that I felt my soul energy separate from myself. And as I was feeling it separate, it all of a sudden like clapped back in to body, and as I sat back up, I looked up and there was like this big saguaro cactus and this mountain, and the moon started to rise. And right before that, I was freaking out. I was like really freaking out before I felt like my soul leave. And I never ate that orange. And I heard a voice tell me, like, because I was all tensed up. I was like fighting this, whatever it was, I was fighting it. And I heard something tell me to eat the orange. And as soon as I put that orange in my mouth, that's when it was like, boom. Like it just opened the floodgates. And so then I felt my soul leave, and I felt myself come back. And as I came back to my body, I sat up, and there's like the saguaro, and there's this mountain, and the moon started to rise, and the moon was bright orange, and it was in the shape of one of those little oranges. And in that moment, I realized that there was something bigger at play there. And that moment I felt so much peace. Like I felt so much peace. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And I felt like God or source or whatever you want to call it was there showing me like, I'm here for you, you know? And then I think right in that moment, Robert started playing the handpan, and my soul just like, the sound of that thing just like, it went from being so difficult to so absolutely beautiful.
So what you're saying is that ayahuasca is a part of your healing journey.
Yeah.
It may be in some ways central to it, but
yeah.
It includes a lot of other things, right?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, the medicine is more of like a level of awareness, right? So the medicine delivers me like a level of awareness of like things that I need to do to better myself. And that includes things like yoga, meditation, reverting back to things that I liked as a kid, which include like riding bicycles, being out in nature, spending time with friends, being involved in my community. So it's very much more than the medicine. I think that the medicine is extremely important because that's how you can clear yourself of things, and then the clearing of that and the awareness allows you to refill your life with all those things that were, you know, bad or whatever you want to call it. It allows for new space for you to really change in your lifestyle. And it's really important.
So where do you live now?
I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
So how would you describe your lifestyle now? Paint me a picture.
Man, my life is great. I'm now a disabled veteran. I own a house. I own a vehicle. I have a cute dog. And it's really beautiful. I've actually been recently like in a space where I'm crying a lot back home just because I consider it like gratitude purges. I'm realizing that these things that I have prayed for a long time are here, and it's very powerful to feel that.
And it's giving you an opportunity to help other vets too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me a little bit about your work there.
I love connecting with veterans. I love, trying to be an example of of what kind of peace is available. And I've worked with people through the glass blowing school, just within my community, yoga, and I love connecting with veterans in ceremony. It's really beautiful to have those exchanges with other veterans, and you can connect on a deep level with those men and women.
I was at a talk at the MAPS conference in Denver, and one of the combat vets got up and talked, and he introduced this number 22.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, I didn't know what he was talking about. And then he asked to see a hands of first responders at the dinner. There were about 1,000 people there. And he asked to show a show of hands for the veterans. There were veterans, of course, all over the audience. And then he asked to show of hands for people who knew someone who had killed themselves.
Yeah.
And there was,
Yeah, it's very frequent. We didn't really lose anybody overseas, but I'm not quite sure of the number, but I know that a good part of my unit, there's been several people that have committed suicide since being home.
Is it 22 a day?
So 22 a day.
22 a day, right?
Yeah, and I think that sometimes that number even goes up. So I've seen it. 22 a day is kind of like logo of people trying to spread that awareness, but that number does fluctuate. And I think I've seen it as high as like 24, 25.
And what have you seen personally with vets in that regard?
I mean, there's just a lot of veterans that are struggling. I think people are coming home and they don't feel good about what they did, and everybody's like, oh, thank you for your service and all these things, and it creates a level of confusion because, for me personally, it's like you kind of feel like you did some wrong, and so there's a level of like weight that carries with that,
Yeah. So how do you think, I know some other veterans groups that are trying to get vets, I Mission is one of those, trying to get vets into ayahuasca circles. How do you see that working with other vets? What do you think the promise is there?
Well, I know what is offered through like the VA, and the VA offers some counseling and medications, medications that really just put a Band-Aid on the nail, right? So we have these nails that are stuck inside of us, and it's like the medications just cause you to ignore it, and that's not the answer, and I think healing takes work, it's not something that you can just pop a pill and feel better, it's something that you have to really identify and really go within and face all those things to really clear that energy out.
Yeah, so it helps to know other vets who've gone through the process that you've gone through.
Yeah.
In order to support other vets that are at least interested in exploring it. It sounds like maybe in some ways out of desperation.
Yeah, it's very important, having this avenue open for people is a very important process. When I look at like how it's changed my life, and I watch so many people, even outside of veterans, but I watch veterans that come into these ceremonies and within a 3-day time period are completely new people. And that is just beautiful.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you a question, but I don't think there's really an answer to it. But why would the DEA want to stop something like this?
Because something like this brings people to love. It allows us to love ourselves, and love is very powerful. And the thing about love is you can't control it. You know, you can't control love, and I think they operate from a state of fear, and this is the opposite side of fear. And so they have this fear of this love because it's not controllable. And so they want to see that collapse, because when we have access to our divine self, like, we don't need their protection. You know, we don't need them to tell us what's right and wrong, because nobody's a better judge of what's right and what's wrong than me, and me alone. You know, I know what's good for me, and I see the changes I have made, and I see it benefit myself. I've seen it benefit countless numbers of people around me.
Right. And when you're saying you know what's right for you, you're saying that within a community that shares those same values, within a circle of other veterans they're seeking to heal, within a circle of people who have spiritual convictions that are essential to their own life.
Yeah.
And they share that same commitment to their conscience.
Yeah, for sure. It's church. And it's church at the highest degree. Because we're not coming in here to have somebody read from a book and tell us, hey, this is what you need to believe. You're stepping into an arena to face all your hardships, all the things that are challenging, all the fears, all the pain, all the sorrow, and coming to a place of love for those things. And that's fucking powerful.
Well, that's probably good enough to leave it on.
Yeah.
This conversation could go on for a while. But thanks, Taylor.